Hi, I'm Sid Sijbrandij, co-founder CEO at GitLab. And I want to talk a bit about feature flag usage. Feature flags are an amazing technology to make sure that you can write new code, but it is not in use yet for everyone. And it can prevent a lot of bad things from happening. You can slowly dial up the usage of certain features. You can prevent but when something goes wrong, you can quickly disable it. And it's a way to have much quicker control than if you have to manage usage via source code. And what we've seen at GitLab is that people tend to overdo the usage of feature flags. At a certain point, there was even a movement to say, hey, for every change you make or any non-trivial change you make, you need a feature flag. That is not the case. You should use feature flags when you can do better in being good steward of the data of our customers, the availability of our services. If there's a risk for availability or data exclusivity or data loss, use feature flags to avoid that. And a good example can be like, hey, your feature might be more resource intensive than you anticipated, and it could bring down the entire site. Because it has too many requests on the database or something like that. So great, use a feature flag. But feature flags come with a huge cost. If you use a feature flag, you have to add additional code. You have to manage the lifecycle of that feature flag. And in the end, you have to remove that additional code. And we see that a lot of time goes into that. There's unclarity, like is a feature launched or not? Like what version did it got released in? Is it ready for prime time? If there's a bug, sometimes people turn off a lot of feature flags that were irrelevant to like the problems, but they don't know which one it was because, well, let's just turn off all the feature flags. So they come with a ton of overhead and they slow us down. So, well, if you need to use it, that's great. Avoid them whenever you can. For example, if you're introducing a feature in a part of GitLab that's not used a lot, like if you're introducing something new that wasn't in GitLab before, you can just say, hey, this is an alpha, you might lose data. You're not going to have a ton of consumption, or it's very unlikely you'll bring down the site because very few people are using it. So there's all these cases where feature flags aren't needed. And I think it's a trade-off to use them. And we should articulate like, hey, use feature flags for data retention, data exclusivity, and reliability, but don't use them for every new feature. Many times they can be avoided, and that will make us go faster and spend less time coordinating. Any questions or comments?
Yes, Sid, so like my way to sort of like interpret and restate what you're saying is, if we can't get to confidence that we can test something that may be a scaling issue in our test QA environments with our automated test or in our local build, then it's a good idea to use a feature flag to kind of roll it out, monitor the deploy of it, and then use the feature flag to turn it off very quickly. Is that a way to sort of bottom line it?
Exactly. That's a good example of where a feature flag is appropriate.
So then another thing that's commonly brought up around feature flags is a developer might say, well, this is going to take me a long time to get this feature done. So I'd like to just commit the stuff into source control and then use the feature flag to kind of reveal it at the last date to end users or even a portion of end users. Should we take a position in that circumstance that we expect to use our iteration value and figure out how to remove as much scope as possible? So the feature is kind of drip, 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 but really released, not feature flagged incrementally. And so you should be able to avoid that circumstance where you have to have this thing living in code, but turned off and untested in production. And therefore you shouldn't need a feature flag.
Exactly. Like nobody likes merge conflicts, and that feature flag might be used for that, but most of the time there's another way to do it and to deliver some value while just shipping the code, and that's much preferable because you get more feedback that way, and that might change how you build the rest of the code out. So sometimes people use feature flags in lieu of iterating, and that's a big problem.
Can anyone else think of a circumstance, optimal or suboptimal, where feature flags tend to come up?
I can add on to, I think in a fix code overall, there's some affix to the permutation of tests if the test needs to enable the flag and test behind the flag. So there's some work with quality there as well to manage flags.
Yeah, that's adding to that lifecycle management that your tests also get harder. Thanks for that, Mac.
And I know this is on Christopher, but I'm happy to jump in the same boat. So I'll be there to help if development needs help from quality anytime.